Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues. You are welcome to this session this evening. My name is Mohadi. I am Professor Matlakala from UNISA, and I will today be taking you through one of the sessions. I will switch off my camera and prepare the presentation so that we can go through together. Yes, and today we are doing the session on guided tour of your proposal. The topic is about clarifying student expectations for a master's and doctoral proposal. And we will today do part 1, and on Thursday we will go on to do part 2. The outcomes of this presentation today, we will talk about the context of the research, an introduction to research proposal, writing a problem statement, and then we will go on to do the challenges of writing a research proposal, which I think is important that we go through so that we can avoid errors. One question I would like to put up so we can have a background about research is what is the meaning of higher degree research? James Cook from Australia mentions that a postgraduate university degree, a higher degree research is actually a postgraduate university degree involving a unique supervised research project, and that is for a master's or a doctoral program. So you can see the highlighted red, which is a postgraduate, meaning the higher degree is a postgraduate, and then the research means a unique supervised research project. And that is what we are all here for our master's and doctoral supervised research projects. Going on, there are several meanings of research, and one would say research means to search again, because that means looking for more information or to examine carefully and scientifically. Another meaning would be to investigate systematically. Or one can say research is diligent, systematic, and scientific inquiry or investigation to validate existing knowledge and generate new knowledge. The other definition could be a systematic process of collecting and analyzing information to increase understanding of a phenomenon about which there is concern or interest or a need to provide solutions. So you will notice that there are words that are coming in constantly in each and every sentence that describes what the meaning of research is. So scientifically or scientific, systematically or systematic. So that explains the meaning of research. It's a systematic inquiry. So the key aspects to observe when doing research is that one should focus on priority areas, especially in your line of work or the specialty that you are in, with a view to develop an academic discipline. And of course, the research undertaken should be action oriented. That means it should aim at developing solutions. It should be participatory in nature. And that means there should be actually some kind of collaboration and following reflection. The research must be timely. That means it must be available when required. And of course, it should be cost effective. That means it should be done in the course of your daily activities. So if you look at all these aspects that talk about when the research should be undertaken, you will notice that they go together with what we are doing in our studies as students. All the programs are time limited. A master's has got about 3 years for one to complete, and a PhD can be done within 3 to 4 years. So that talks about the timely of the research that we will be doing. So it's important that we talk about the timely of the research, because we need to use the results when they are still relevant. And of course, another aspect will be the results should be useful, not only to us as students, not only for obtaining the degree, but also to administrators, policymakers, communities, and all the other people that can benefit from the research that we are undertaking. So the context of research, where does one start? You start with questions that have not been answered, or a concern or a need to provide solutions. It can be from a worrisome observation made in practice, or something in the literature that generates the interest. So once you have something that really tells you it needs a scientific inquiry, that means that is a researchable problem. So all this, whether it's questions, the worrisome observation, or the something that you get from literature, it culminates to a research problem. And of course, once you have a research problem, it warrants you now to develop a research proposal so that you can work through that problem. And this brings us to what is a research proposal. So a simple definition or explanation, just in practical terms, a research proposal is a comprehensive overview of the researcher's intentions in completing their proposed study. It details plans for all aspects of the research process, or one can actually say it's a concise and coherent summary of your proposed research. Remember, we went through how you develop a problem, and now for you to be able to take the problem further, you need to develop a research proposal. So I want you to think about your own study. I want you to think about the focus of your research for the very degree that you are registered for. Furthermore, there are various terminologies that are used to describe what a research proposal is, depending on the purpose of the inquiry. One could say it's a research outline, or a synopsis of the research, a plan of research, a research project, or a thesis plan. That could be a blueprint for your future activities, a preconceived framework for implementation of your research activities, something that will deal with your ideas as a researcher about what the research you want to do, the objectives and the methodology, and how the research findings are to be reported and disseminated. So what is important here is that you need to problematize your research focus. Once you have that research problem, you have identified it, you need to put it into a perspective that will ensure that this is a researchable problem. And then it will give you comfort that this is not just a problem that can be talked around the table and then be solved. So you understand that here you need a scientific inquiry for you to be able to solve the problem or get solutions to the problem that you have identified. So To problematize your research focus, that will be exposing the multidimensionality of a problem through the following. You demonstrate the global, continental, or national existence of that problem. Where does it come from? How big is it, this problem? You demonstrate the topicality. Is it a contemporary issue? Like, is it acute? You demonstrate the relevance of it. Is it a long-term thing that can be solved over some time? Or is this a chronic problem that has been happening and it now really needs the solution? The topic significance. You look at statistical, subjective, normative, or experiential matters around the topic so that we can understand its significance. So as you go about problematizing your research focus, there are a series of questions that can assist you to really make sure that this is a problem that will need a scientific inquiry. So once you've got those questions, or you have observed whatever it is that you think is a problem, or you read the literature and you found a gap that needs a scientific inquiry, the questions that will assist you to really make sure that this is a researchable problem is, you need to understand, to ask yourself, what is the problem? And once you have found the gap, that this is the problem, why is it a problem? You need to bring in information that will explain, why do you think this is a problem? What have you observed that makes you realize that this is a problem? What impact does this have that makes it a problem? What is known about the problem? Search the literature and find out. Has this been attended before? And if something was done before, what was done? Why was it done? And why didn't it work? Or why did it work? Why are we still having it as a problem? And of course, you need to ask yourself, as a researcher, you need to know about the problem. So it shouldn't be just something that you are hearing about. What is the size and the intensity of the problem? How big is this problem? Is it causing some kind of damage somewhere? Who is affected? How, when, and where are they affected by the problem? And of course, you ask another question, what are the factors that may have contributed to the problem? And then you still ask yourself, what are the possible solutions? Are there even possible solutions? So all these questions, as you ask yourself these questions, you are able to make sure that you've got a solid problem that will need a scientific inquiry. Sometimes you can ask yourself this problem, and then you find that no, this is something that we can sit around the table and talk about and then solve it immediately. So this is where you actually look at the size and the intensity and the cause of the problem, and then you find that no, this does not warrant any steps of research. So once you get all the information around those questions, you then develop an argument. An argument is a position supported by clear thinking and reasonable evidence with a secure connection to solid facts. So you need to now construct an argument based on all the information that you received from asking yourself all those questions. So you put forward a claim or a viewpoint that will come with sufficient evidence. This may include such as the sections from the background information. Remember, you were asking yourself, what is the problem? Where does it come from? Has it occurred before, or anything like that? Any premises the view may be based on, the evidence supporting the claim, or other supporting viewpoints, and at the end, you bring in a conclusion that will actually indicate that this is a real problem that needs to be taken forth. You need scientific steps. So what is important here is that your argument should be ethical. The argument should be reasonable, and it should be made openly and honestly. These are examples of types of evidence which includes reasoning that links to the main idea. So as you bring forth your argument, you need to bring in the facts about whatever the problem that we have identified. You need to bring in examples, the statistics that will support your argument, or the statements by qualified authorities. If you are talking about you want to investigate the number of murder cases in South Africa or elsewhere, then you need a statement by a qualified authority. That means you will get a statement from either the police, the people who have really gathered concrete information, who've got the authority to say, yes, this is a problem, we know about it, and this is the evidence. Somewhere the evidence can be personal observations or experience that you have had as the researcher. You can also do comparisons. There can be theories around, and of course, you may have evidence that comes from the results of findings elsewhere. Now, the example of how you formulate a statement of a problem. So you have gathered all those questions, you know where you got the evidence. This is now again where you ask the questions for you to develop this statement. So your questions should be what should be. In what should be, you talk about who is involved, when are they involved, are there typical examples, and of course you go on to check what exists or the impact of the discrepancy. Let me give you an example of I will give an example from the medical profession. You identify a problem from women who are having breast cancer, and this is about their pain. You go on to get the facts. Now you realize that they are having pain, and when they are in hospital, they receive some kind of medication such as morphine, which should take care of their pain. But what you observe, you notice that the morphine is not given constantly because of certain reasons. Some of the reasons may be because it depresses the respiratory system, so it cannot be given in short intervals. But then the problem is that the women, they continue to suffer the pain. Now you want to investigate this. So what should be here will be who is involved. It's female patients who are suffering from cancer. When they are in pain, an example will be, and they are not given their morphine as required. So what exists is that the pain continues and the patients are not getting better. That will be the impact of the discrepancy, that the patients are not getting better because they continue to have pain. So you look at all those. This is just an example that I'm giving, but you can think about your own study and how you have formulated your problem statement, and check, did you have what should be? Who is involved or what is involved? When? And then what exists there? And what is this discrepancy that causes you to say you are going to look to research this as a problem? So in the conclusion of your problem, you actually get a well-formulated research problem after you have gathered all the facts. So a well-formulated research problem and statement will provide guidance in the whole research process. So as you start your research proposal, which really comes on because of the problem statement that you are having. So the formulated research problem will assist you to finalize the research title. Then you are able to say the title of the study will be this. And then the development of the aim of the study as well as the objectives. Again, you will be assisted to formulate the research questions and the hypothesis. And lastly, it will assist to determine the research design and the methods. So as we move from the research problem going forward to the aim and the objectives, it is important to understand what the aim means. So the aim will be what you hope to do, your overall intention in the project. So it gives what or where you aspire to be by the end of the research. It is a point of doing the research, and an aim is therefore generally a broad statement that will indicate how you are going to attend to the problem. What do you want to do with the problem identified? And of course, the objectives are those steps that you will take to achieve your aim. So once you develop, when you develop the objectives, you develop them in such a way that they will assist you to collect evidence that will be used to respond to the aim. And the aim is what then will assist you to solve the problem. And you've got the research questions. The research questions are actually the objectives expressed as questions. On the other hand, depending on the methodology of your study, you can have a hypothesis, which is a proposition made as a basis for reasoning without any assumptions of its truth. So this is something that you may wish to test. So we've got quite a few challenges that are related to writing the research proposal. And these are very important that we get so that when you start looking at your proposal, you can actually reflect and check if this is a proposal that has been scientifically written. So there are those challenges that are specific to the components, such as the research focus. Because your problem will assist you with the developing the topic. One of the challenges will be the choice of the topic. So you find you've got a very straightforward problem, but the manner in which the topic is written, it becomes a problem and it makes the research not, the topic not researchable. So the topic should be constructed around the problem itself, and there should be a link between the two, so that as you go on to develop your aim and objectives or questions and hypotheses, then there should be a golden thread. One of the other challenges is the use of old or outdated data references. This is another problem because once you use outdated data or references, according to that data that is old, the problem might no longer be feasible to be researched, or the solutions may have been given already. So the recency of the references is very important to support the currency of the problem as well. Another aspect is the academic reading and writing skills, which is very important. Usually the casual writing that one has in their proposal, where the paragraphs are not correct, connecting, there is no coherence in the use of those paragraphs, and the argument is not very clear or strong enough to convince the study to be a researchable study. So one needs to look at all those so that when you write, you can immediately make sure that you maintain the scientific rigor. Other challenges are related to writing the research proposal. It's actually moving from the informal language of speaking. This is very important. Moving from the informal language of speaking to a more formal language of writing. Remember that the proposal is written, it's not spoken. So there are those common mistakes that will make the information just not be in a formal language. For instance, the use of contractions. When we talk I don't, or where is, where's, haven't. But when you write scientifically, this should be written in full to indicate do not, where is, have not, because this is a formal language of writing and a proposal is written, not spoken. Things such as sweeping statements. If in your argument you write all over the world, everyone is involved. The whole of South Africa is at risk. So you see, the problem is no longer like what you have observed. If you have observed the problem in a setup where you are, it cannot be like you want to say all over the world, because you haven't been over the world. You have not seen it all over the world. Even if you get to search literature, the literature would not say all over the world. It will indicate whether it's internationally, locally, or. So these are some of the informal ways of speaking that one needs to avoid in the proposal. The use of glitches. It's nice when you are talking and then you just mention those glitches like I'm down and out. But in a scientific document, these are not this is not the language that should be used. Things such as from pillar to post, they make sentences lose meaning. So you need to use the correct scientific language because it's important in the research proposal. Some of the other common mistakes include the use of jargon. We all know jargon. There is jargon, the medical jargon, the police jargon, the political jargon, the internet. So for instance, in the medical terms, if you put K, the K is an element for the symbol for or symbol for potassium. But somewhere you find K in slang languages means all right. So one should be careful how they use that. Some languages such as the pupils are dilated, that can mean a person is surprised. In another setup, it may mean somebody is afraid. And on the other hand, it can be a person is dead. So this is important so that you can pick the scientific language that should be used in the proposal. An example of the police jargon will be when they say a person has assumed room temperature. To someone else, it may mean something, but to the police, it means an individual has died. But for the purposes of scientific writing, it should be written in the language that all scientists can be able to understand. In a political language, you can say somebody is getting on a soapbox, that meaning that they are going to make a speech in public. internet language such as the message of the day, which will be in an abbreviation MOTD. And this brings one to self-invented abbreviations. It's very important that we use the abbreviations that are commonly used in all the scientific language, or in the specialties, or as usual as people can know. For instance, the abbreviation of HIV, we all know what HIV means, but it shouldn't be like every time you have one word, you want to change it and decide, I want to put in this abbreviation, because that abbreviation may not be acceptable. For instance, there are some other abbreviations that are common and they can be used differently in different setups. If you talk about ANC, somebody may say ANC is the African National Congress. But in the medical terms, ANC means antenatal care. So one needs to be careful when they use the abbreviations and those that they will pick, so that they can explain them better. Yes, and colleagues, this brings me to the end of the presentation for this evening. Thank you very much for listening. I see there are no new questions. Oh, yes. Okay, there is a question from Anonymous. How long must be the length of the research proposal for a master's? Okay. We will talk about this in the next session. The length of the proposal by rule of thumb should be 10 to 12 pages. But if you look at the guidelines from other colleges, it is indicated that some sections should have a specific number of words. For instance, if it's the introduction, you are guided maybe to have 800 words in the introduction. So as you go on the problem statement, you can be guided to have about 500 words. So at the end, you may find that you've got about 12 to 15 pages of the proposal. Thank you. Other questions? And of course, you will be guided by your supervisor on the length, depending on the intensity of the problem that you will be researching and the methodology that you will be applying. That will also determine the length of the proposal, but generally 12 to 15 pages, that's enough for a proposal. Remember, the proposal is a snippet of what you will be doing in your research. More question, colleagues? I hope you enjoyed the presentation. Just a few of some questions that one may actually have in mind about formulating a research question. Remember that we come from different disciplines, and if you identify a problem from a specific discipline, you have to look at the intensity of the problem around that discipline. So, for instance, if you are registered in psychology, you have to your problem has been identified from psychology. You do have to look at the problem from the perspective of psychology. Although, because psychology may be multi or interdisciplinary, some of the problems may be multi or interdisciplinary. You are welcome to look at other specialties if that problem ever existed and how did they solve it. But otherwise, going forward, because you will have to work on the problem as a matter of the psychology specialty, then it should focus on that. The other specialties or literature from other specialties can be used to strengthen the problem, to refocus and make mention on why do you think this is a problem, if it happens even in other people. I see another question which says, what are the features of the coherent and logical argument? A logical argument will be an argument that indicates what the real problem is, how one has identified the problem, and where does this happen as a problem. For instance, if you identify a problem, let's say it's more like you say students in University X do not know how to use a computer. You need to indicate in your argument, when you say they do not know how to use a computer, how did you notice that? What impact does that have? Does that have any impact on their studies? Do they fail exams, or do they not, and are they not able to take the exams because they do not know how to take a computer? If it means they are not using the computer to take their exams, why do you think they are not knowing a computer is a problem? Have they been given lessons about the computer? Before you can want to investigate it, you have to check first. Is it a requirement for them to even know how to use a computer? And if it's a requirement, what has the people who expect them to know a computer done? And whatever it is they have done, does it help the students? Have they given them lessons and they still do not know how to use a computer? And whilst they cannot use a computer now, Does it mean they are not able to take up their exams? Does it stall their progress in their studies? Can they not have another alternative? Are there any other things that are happening around their lack of knowledge of using a computer? So you bring in the argument like that so that one can understand when you say this is a researchable problem. Yes, more questions, and I hope the responses are. You can send in follow-up questions on the responses that I've given, if there are any. Okay, I'm just reading the questions quickly again. Oh gosh. I would like to find out on what should a researcher do if there are limited literature on his or her topic, especially emerging issues. Well, if there's limited literature on as long as you have a strong argument that indicates that this is a problem that is researchable, I think it's always a good that one takes on the research and make sure that all the steps are followed. And when there is limited literature, this will actually guide you on the type of methodology that we'll use, which will accept the fact that there is a limited literature on the topic. So there is no harm in doing the research if the problem is centered around a limited literature, as long as there is a strong argument that shows that this warrants a scientific inquiry. Yes, and thanks to Anonymous. I'm struggling to score. Yes. Now I got it. Yes, and then there's Anonymous again. I'm not confident with my research questions. Do I literally change the objectives into a question? Once again, remember that the objectives should be designed in such a way that they will provide you with information enough to respond to the aim of the study. Once you have identified the problem, you bring in the aim of the study, which now indicates what you wish to do about that problem. And when you say this is what the aim of the study now is to do 1, 2, 3, you need to design the objectives in such a way that when you go to collect the information, that information will be able to respond to the aim that you have designed. So the questions, like we said, will be turned into will be the research questions will be the objectives turned into research questions. So it will depend on what do you want to use in your study. If it's objectives, it can be objectives. If you want to use them as questions, it will be questions. more the same like where you need to use a hypothesis. Will I be penalized if I go over the page limit? And thank you also to you, Anonymous, for the acknowledgement of the detailed presentation. I don't think one would be penalized if you go over a page limit, but remember that it's important that you stick to the guidelines, because if you go over the limit, it means you might have given even information that might not be needed at the time. So if the problem statement is given 600 words, it means you need to put the argument in such a way that you present it succinctly in 600 words. Otherwise, then it means you shall have put in extra information that is not required. But there is no harm as long as the information is relevant, especially where there is a lot of application. It wouldn't kill to have one page overboard. What is scientific rigor? How to maintain scientific rigor within a proposal? Scientific rigor is where you actually develop a golden thread in the proposal, in your scientific process. So you put in information and make sure that you apply scientific evidence to support all your views or all the bases that you put forward. So in your argument, for instance, in the problem statement, you will need to put in evidence that will support your observation, so that one can understand that this really warrants a scientific steps. The application of the scientific methods of putting the argument, the views, the basis, the statistical analysis, the voices of authority that can be used as a support for your basis, that will promote scientific rigor. If, for instance, you are talking about teenage pregnancy in South Africa during COVID-19, and you say, according to the Minister of Health, the statistics are such that, and then you are supporting your own observation that in the community that I stay in, we have noticed that this is the problem that comes in with a teenage pregnancy. Perhaps you are talking about the lack of clinics, which now becomes a problem. So you need to bring in all the information that will promote the study to really warrant scientific investigation. How old should references be? References should be 5 years and beyond. At least 5 years and beyond. So if you are writing a research now in 2022, your 5 years would be 21, 2019, 18, and 17. Unless if the reference is the only reference that ever existed, and you are sure that that's the only one that will give you the information, then you can use that even if it's a 1980 reference. But all those that have been updated, because then we have your problem is a contemporary issue. It needs a contemporary literature to support. And responding to another one from Anonymous, is there a book or website where one can be referred to? I'm asking for myself, who is not quite familiar with research. I'm not quite sure here, Anonymous. Perhaps if you can just clarify the kind of a book, or do you mean a research book? There are several research books that you can be referred to, and then you are welcome to maybe check them with the library, the books that talk to research steps. And Nambita, can I choose a topic that I did in undergrad, in my third year, or any topic that I have done previously? Well, Nambita, remember that it's not just about choosing the topic. It's about identifying a researchable problem. If you remember, if you recall what we said is that the meaning of research, why do we do research? We do research to bring in new information. We do research to solve an existing problem. So your topic that was in the undergrad, I don't know how old may that topic be. And if you look back at that topic, has the problem not been solved until today? If that topic was done 3 years ago in your undergrad, I'm just giving an example. Is that still a problem today? And if it's still a problem today, what has been done about this problem? If nothing has been done, why hasn't anything been done? So you actually need to look at the problem rather than the topic itself. I hope it answers you, Nambita. And then there's Rona or Rauna. Sorry for the mispronunciation. I would like to find out on what should a researcher do if there are limited literature on his or her topic, especially emerging issues. Oh, I think we have attended to this, Rona. And Anonymous, when is the due date to submit master's proposal? Anonymous, the proposal is submitted at any time as soon as you have finalized it. So working with your supervisor, you need to submit a draft that the supervisor will look at, and you will get feedback and guidance on how to do improvements on your proposal and send it back to your supervisor again. Once the proposal is ready and your supervisor agrees that it is ready, then you can start submitting it to the relevant other sections, such as maybe to the scientific review committee or to the ethics committee for final review, so you can get ethical clearance. So it depends on how you have worked your proposal correctly, and then how the research is focused such that it's ready to can be taken to the next level. So this depends on the student, the readiness of the proposal, how fast and hard you are working. Paul, can one use more than one independent variable in a research? For example, 3 factors affecting voter turnout. This is service delivery, age, and electoral system. Yes, yes, there is no number of variables that can be used as long as you know, as long as the variables will give an impact on the problem that you are trying to research. Okay, Anonymous, thank you very much. You will revisit and change the abbreviations. Yes, the abbreviations are very important that we align them to those that will be scientifically accepted. And regarding the references, it needs to be in the last 5 years. Is it fine if the bulk of out literature is within the relevant 5 years and a few less, say for example 2012 or not? Like I indicated, Anonymous, if there are recent books and literature and all that can support your research, it is good to do so. Use those that are most recent. And as I indicated, the literature will actually support the recency of the problem that you are investigating. So it is advisable that you stick to the recent 5 years, unless if the 2012 edition is the only edition that is available and it does talk to the focus of your study. V2, thank you for the presentation. I had the problem with the connection. My study is focused on secondary education, but the literature related to it is predominantly on higher education. Is it allowed to use such literature and relate it to secondary education? Remember, V2, once again, you are solving a problem. What is the problem that is there in your secondary education? Because if it's the same problem that happened in higher education, that is why you have the literature in higher education. Most of the investigations might have done with the problem identified in higher education. So if it means the literature is relevant for the focus of your study in secondary education, you can use the literature to support the problem that you have identified, so that you can convince that this is a researchable topic and this is a researchable problem. Yes, thank you, Paul. Yes, I don't see more questions here, and I will wait a while to see if there's anybody who wants to put their last minute question, and then we will or give or send in follow up on the answers that we provided, and then we will take it from there. I'll give it just a few more minutes. Yes, I see there are no more questions. On that note, I would like to thank you all for attending, and thank you for engaging with your questions. I hope you will be able to attend the second session, where we will now talk on the proposal itself, and some of the questions that you were asking here will also be attended in the session that is coming on Thursday. And yes, I will close off now, and thank you for your attendance all. Good evening.